In recent years, the MK18 / CQBR has become a very popular carbine for regular folks to go out and buy. It was originally a upper receiver that was issued out to SOCOM. It's still being used by ODAs and various folks in the military before they make the switch over to M-LOK rails and over to Block 3s is kind of what they're called, with the various rails out there and getting a little more streamlined. But Steve and I, we've been running these CQBR style guns with these Daniel Defense RIS-2 rails for quite a while, and it's actually one of my more enjoyable guns to shoot for a few reasons, and we kind of want to go over that. But first, I want to go ahead and go over our two loadouts we have here out in Vermont as we're doing some Arctic warfare type shooting. So I've got mine here. Obviously, it's a 10-3. I've got a SOCOM, Surefire RC2 SOCOM, then LA5, a mod light that's affixed down here on the bottom. Some folks ask why put it on the bottom versus the top, and it doesn't really matter. It's just another way of doing it. It can help streamline it to some extent when you're throwing it into bags versus being up here with the LA5, but whatever. Got a T2 on a 193 mount. Obviously, I don't have backup irons, and one reason for that is I like running my laser a little further forward to actuate the button, the fire button, with my thumb. So if I have a front sight posted here, that ends up me having to throw my PEC-15 more to the rear, and that kind of disrupts my grip. I also have a dual pad here in case I do need to use the button here. Since I have a 193, I have an EOTech G33 with the riser plate installed, and that actually works out pretty well. Radian, gas busters, the charging handle, which helps with some of the blowback. B5 stock, and this is on a standard arrow lower, and I've got a, which trigger is this, the QSM?
The ALG QMS, quality mil spec.
QMS, so it's like a $60
The
trigger.
quality mil spec trigger is going to run you like 45, and then their ACT, which is like the next step up, that's in the Jack carbine. That's going to be like 60, 65 bucks.
Yeah. So it's a little better than a mil spec, but it's still more or less a mil spec trigger. You still got that 5-pound weight. I would say it's probably about 5 pounds. At least that's what it felt like.
But what's cool about these though is that you don't have that grit before the break.
Yep.
It's just the wall and then the shot break and back. It's just got the heavier spring.
And so I've been running this. I normally shoot guys the SSAs and SSAEs, which those do get issued in some of these guns that go out to SOCOM. But we're just running these more sort of mil spec triggers. And then I've got one of our slings. So what do you have on this one?
So on this one here, very similar setup, but with this one we're running the shorter mod light. We've got a front sight post on this, a fold down front sight, so you got the PEC a little bit further back. We don't need to run a pressure pad with this in this configuration because my thumb can reach up and hit the button. If I'm running it right-handed or left-handed, it's in a good spot to activate the button on the PEC. And then on this side I've got the pressure switch tucked in a little bit, just enough space for me to wrap my thumb down and activate the light. There's got Velcro, and one of the US rigger bands keeps that in place pretty good. It does have a rear backup sight, and then this one's got the EOTech 553. But again, same trigger, same arrow receiver set, both the upper and the lower. And then the
pretty
sling.
much the same. Yeah. Pretty much the same. We just have different optics and different setups. Something that I get asked a lot, and I know Steve does as well, is like, what is a MK18? What is the designation for that, or a CQBR? Some of you might be wondering what is CQBR, and Steve can talk more to this, but it stands for Close Quarters Battle Receiver. Something people think it stands for Close Quarters Battle Rifle. But it was originally issued to the guys existing like 14.5 guns, and this was just a shorter option. So some of the guys that we've had the privilege of training, they've showed up and they've had both. They've had their 14.5 upper, they've had their Elcan, their EOTech. Some of them rocking an aim point, and then they've got their little shorty uppers, so they can kind of customize it for what their mission is and what they're doing, and they can then do the job that way. But Steve, talk about if somebody wants to build one of these or buy one already made, what are some things they can do, or what should they think about when they're going out and spending some of their moolah?
Daniel Defense does offer a complete CQBR MK18 RIS-2 upper receiver already built. You might be able to save yourself some money by, like what we did, we got the receiver set from Arrow, and then we bought the rails and picked a Criterion barrel, cut down to 10-3 for us, and then I assembled them. We assembled them in the house. Generally, if you're gonna build something, you're gonna be able to save yourself a little bit of money if you're able to actually build the thing and pick out the parts that you want. You can also customize it a little bit to where, we like the Criterion barrels. We use a 1-in-8 twist as opposed to a military or gov barrel, using a 1-in-7 chambered in 5.56. These are 1-in-8. chambered in 223 wild, so we can run 223 or 556 out of it. So that's what we decided to go with for these. But again, like the RIS2 rails, these things are like tanks. They bolt on nice and solid. You can put lasers, sights and stuff on them, and then your rail's not going to rotate and bend. These things can take a pretty good beating.
Some people, they think that obviously M-LOK is kind of the new future to rails, and some folks ask, like, is the quad rail going to go away? And I really think it's not. If you're shooting, a high round count, training day, and you're doing like 5 mags that are all loaded up, your M-LOK rail, regardless of really what it's going to be, is going to be pretty hot after 5 mags. But these quad rails,
takes a lot longer to heat these up.
They're good to go. Now they do retain heat longer, but it's a lot longer to get there. So I'll always have quad rails with, in my armory with my guns. They can also be very beneficial if you start doing like a Mark 12 or whatever, like an SPR, because obviously if you start mounting, night vision optics, like a PVS 24LR or something, if you've got like a skinny little M-LOK rail, that can potentially like bend and cause some weird stuff with your scope. So having a quad rail can be really beneficial in that area, in that regard. But for this little gun right here,
having the longer optics on some of those guns too, the guys will have to take lasers and put them onto the side. And if you're stacking your tolerance on like your M-LOK rail, you put a Picatinny section on it and then have to put the laser on it, you can run into issues with it not maintaining zero.
So quad rails, I mean, you get a lot of durability, and you also get, less or more heat transfer, whatever you want to call it. So I think they'll always exist. There'll always be people running them. And I know people are like, oh, well, it's heavy and I don't want that. Like, well, we run in gun with these and they're by no means light. We're putting lasers and full-size suppressors on them, but we run them. We've been hiking around out here in the snow. I just hiked, I don't know how far that is with this sucker, and it's not a big deal. Granted, I'm not out for weeks on end with this guy, but it's not a big deal if you're going around shooting, or it's your home defense gun or your civil unrest gun or whatnot. So my big thing is you can go out and buy one of these, from like Daniel Defense or whatever, but you will save some money, assembling it yourself. Talk about gas port size, because that's something they're going to
so like on these, Crane did quite a bit of testing to find an optimal gas port size that would work. It's not the best for unsuppressed or best for suppressed, but it's going to give you the best rounded or overall performance for running a can, or if you have to take the can off and run the thing. So on a 10.3 barrel, 0.070 is, or close to it, very close to it, is where you want to be with the gas port size on that, so that the gun's not over gassed and then just beating the crap out of the internals and wearing stuff out any sooner than you have to. Something I found working on the guns that Luke shoots, or that that Drew and the rest of the guys are running, these get run with a can probably 90% of the time. So one thing we found is the life of the gas tubes and the gas rings wear out much faster, because we're putting a lot more pressure back into the gun with the can. So that's just something to be mindful of if you do run a can the majority of the time. It's good to have gas rings and gas tubes on hand that you can switch stuff out and replace those parts.
And this is a gun I shoot mine pretty often, and then we've run these in training. One reason we like to run these is if we are training guys that are issued these, we run these for that shooting package. We don't run our super high speed M-LOKed guns with crazy stuff. We literally clone our guns essentially the same as our students. So there's no way for them to make excuses like, well, you've got a muzzle brake and a crazy M-LOK, your gun weighs 3 pounds. Like, nope, my gun weighs the same as yours. All the time standards that I'm performing at 25, 50, whatever we're doing, it's all the same. We got the same gear, same triggers. I think the last one we did, we literally had the same, pretty much the exact same setup. And so that's one thing that we like to do here when we're training dudes and whatnot. But the CQBR, I think the Mark 18 like series of guns and rifles and this like particular setup, I think it's going to be around for a long time. And as units switch over to the like the Block 3s, they'll either move their uppers to other guys, or they'll just switch out the rails, one of the two, and then we're going to have a lot of these rails hitting the market most likely. We already have a bunch that are doing that, so you can pick them up used pretty cheap, and maybe they came from a place somewhere, who knows. And then you got some history, and some of your tax dollars back maybe. So that's sometimes how it works. But love these guns, they're really great. I actually prefer running this over my 416. I know some of you guys will think that's a little strange, a little weird, but it's just, it's just a little bit lighter, and honestly, just not as much gas in the face when this is, properly set up. So, anything else you want to add? Or
no, it's good to go. I'm ready to go warm these things up.
All right. So if you want to get a CQBR / Mark 18 style gun like this, go ahead. They're great. It's still a 5.56 gun, but the most important thing is training. and it's your ability to press that trigger, put sights on target, and get your hits. That's what matters.